Welcome, everyone. This is episode 8 of our online series. I'm here today with Irving Wladawsky-Berger, but before we begin, I just want to give you a little bit of housekeeping. The next symposium is on May 20, 2025. We do hope that you will join us there. Remember that we also have a pre-event on May 19th, which has phenomenal networking opportunities, the CIO Leadership Award dinner, as well as a cocktail reception with our Innovation Showcase finalists. In addition to this podcast, we have upcoming events for innovators. If you're not already an innovator, you can go to our welcome page and you can join. It's $75 a year, but it's well worth it. You'll get discounted tickets, access to the pre-event, and also access to some of our exclusive online content. So on March 18, Irving and I will be hosting an open Q&A, and on April 1, we will have George Westerman come in to give one of his talks, and we're very excited about that. All right, so without further ado, Irving, how are you today?
Allan, it's a pleasure to be here again. I have enjoyed our conversations and our discussions about different themes that we will have in this symposium. So I'm looking forward to our dialogue.
Well, I have to say that I'm looking forward to this too, and the pleasure that I have is reading your blog every month, and so that I can prepare to have these conversations with you. And today we're going to discuss two of your posts, the first one being how humans and AI can complement each other in the workplace, and the second one is the impact on AI on research and innovation. And I believe, Irving, that you can give a little introduction because the authors of these two papers that you reviewed in these posts are going to be guests at the symposium. Isn't that right?
Exactly. One of the things I have enjoyed very much doing at the symposium is to moderate a panel that includes a MIT graduate student or postdocs. In other words, some young researchers. And I did that. This is my third year of doing that. And in for my session at the symposium, I invited Isabella Loaiza San, who got her PhD under Sandy Pentland in the Media Lab and is now a postdoc working with Roberto Rigobon at the Sloan School of Management. And then the second participant is Aidan Toner Rogers. He's a second year student in the Department of Economics. And each of them, Isabella working with Roberto and Aidan on his own, wrote some really interesting papers on the impact of AI on the workplace, on research and innovation that we're going to discuss now, and that I look forward to discussing at the symposium in our session.
Yeah, and actually, I just want to point out that Aidan was written up in the Wall Street Journal, and they have a nice picture of him standing between uh, David Otter and
Darren
Darren
Acemoglu.
Acemoglu.
Yeah, Darren Acemoglu. Yeah, when I saw the picture, in fact, I included the picture in the blog because when I saw the Wall Street Journal article, the thing that immediately caught my attention is here is this second year graduate student in economics, Aidan Toner Rogers, standing in between two of the world's top economists, David Otter and Darren Acemoglu. And by the way, as I learned subsequently, David Autor's dog was in the picture also. And I learned his dog is called Shelby, and his dog was in the office with David, and that's where the picture was shot. And both David and Darren said in the Wall Street article how incredibly impressed they were with the research that Aidan had done. And I have to agree. Then I said, well, I have to read this paper he wrote about it, and I have to then figure out how to best write about it. So that really caught my attention. And then with Isabella in her paper, she and Roberto wrote about one of the most interesting aspects of the impact of AI on the future of work, which isn't will AI replace workers, but it's more how can humans and AI better work together? How can AI augment the capabilities of workers, and how can humans use AI as a tool to help them do things that before they couldn't do before? And these are very important topics.
Yeah, so we're going to get to all that. And so a couple things. First of all, I also thought it was interesting that David and Darren don't agree necessarily on what the impact of AI is going to be. So if anybody thinks that everybody is in agreement on what we're going to talk about, that is not the case. The other thing is I just want to briefly summarize kind of the key messages from these two young researchers
Yeah.
that we're going to be
Mm.
talking about. So Isabella is really talking about humans and AI, how they can complement each other in the workplace. And Aidan's message is a little bit different, which is, AI seems to dramatically change the research discovery process, and we're going to drill down into that uh,
Mhm.
in more detail in a few minutes. But first of all, Irving, let me start you out with sort of a high level uh,
Mhm.
question. So, if you take a broad view, um, when we talk about AI in the workplace, do you see it fundamentally augmenting human capabilities, or do you think it's more replacing human functions?
There is no question in my mind that it's going to augment human capabilities. There is no question. And in fact, if you look at the analysis that a number of researchers have done over the last, I don't know, 10, 20 years about the impact of technologies on the future of work, uh, just about every serious researcher has said that advanced technologies help us do our work much better. And the reason I like that answer is because that applies to all of the tools that humans have invented over the last millennia, which is the tools are very good. And people always say, okay, but now that we have these tools, will they automate what you used to do? And the answer always comes back that the tool, the technology transform the jobs that people are doing, because some parts of the job can now be done much better with the help of a tool. But once people know how to better work with the tool, they become much more productive, and they are able to do their jobs much, much better than they could do without the tool. And that's not different with AI.
So, Irving, let me just push back a little bit on this because you use the term augmentation, but I wonder whether some people feel that augmentation is kind of a feel-good term, and that in fact what's happening is that the technologies that we build are basically doing certain tasks, and humans then move on to another task. So to give you a concrete example, if you read Aidan's paper, he talks about ideation with doing research as compared to evaluating different proposals. And so, what he showed is that when AI gets into the mix, the percentage of time that the researchers spend on ideation drops dramatically, and they shift their time over to taking all the proposals and doing the experiments necessary to validate them. That sounds to me like the humans are just shifting to a different job. It's not so much augmentation, it's shifting. I mean, how do you respond to that?
I would call that their nature of their jobs has been transformed. That um, instead of now spending a lot of time deciding what are the new ideas that we can apply research and innovation to go invent. In the case of Aidan, I'm sorry, he was analyzing how to use AI to create new materials, like for an airplane or for something else, or for that matter, I mean, that was his concrete experiment, but you can use this also to see how do researchers in a pharmaceutical company can create new drugs, new pharmaceuticals to treat, let's say, breast cancer or some other forms of cancer, or how can researchers in medicine create whole new ways of treating humans that have different issues. And what happens is that they now are using AI to help give them ideas about what are potential places to investigate. In the case of the materials researcher that Aidan was looking at, is before the researchers had to come up with the ideas by themselves, or they read papers that came up with ideas from the research community all over the world. They talked to their colleagues, whatever. Let's say AI is very good at being able to analyze lots of papers published in research journals about new materials that the researchers couldn't have read all the papers. And so when they started trying to use AI as a tool to help give them ideas, all of a sudden AI helped them get a lot more ideas. Now, uh, what is very important is you would say, well, so therefore AI automated their jobs because it gave them the ideas. Well, not so fast, because in the world of research, just having an idea is necessary but not sufficient. A lot of ideas don't work. A lot of ideas, for one reason or another, uh, when you start testing them, aren't going to give you the results that you're looking for. So there is a massive evaluation process where you have to decide, do they work, do they not work? You do tests, you do all kinds of things. If you said to me, well, Irving, you test all the ideas and then you decide which are the best. If you test all the ideas, you spend so much time wasting in ideas that aren't going to work that you cannot possibly do that. And one of the findings, I'm sorry to keep going on this, but it's such an interesting point. One of the findings in Aidan's research is that what made top researchers is that when they got now this long list of ideas, they had very good judgment, very good experience in prioritizing which are the ideas that will are most likely to result in a new product, in a new material, which will work out, and what are the ones that are is a lower priority.
Yeah, so everything that you say, I mean, I agree with. I think that those are the conclusions that Aidan came up with. But I think still, when we talk about augmentation
By the
versus
way, he didn't just
replace-
conclude. What the reason David and Darren was so impressed is he went to a materials research institution. He cooperated with them, and he actually did a pilot experiment with about, I don't know, 1,500 researchers or some such number. And so he was able to get empirical data, which has been very
I don't disagree with that. I think at a macro level, we can call this augmentation, but if you take the research process and break it down into micro tasks, some of those tasks end up being replaced. So I think it's kind of both replacement and augmentation, but let's put that aside for now. I want to move on to Isabella. So Isabella identified five major challenges
different.
where AI falls short. So I'm just going to enumerate them very
Oh,
briefly. So you
please do.
got small data, inference, extrapolation, multiple justifiable solutions, interpersonal relationships, and subjective beliefs. So if you look at these are where humans shine. What do you think is the hardest for AI to overcome?
Well, first of all five, that's why Isabella and Roberto picked them for their paper, are things that are challenging for AI. For example, to train an AI model, you need very large amounts of data. And the more data you have, the better the model will do. But what if you want help in AI in an area where you don't have a lot of data, where AI has to do the best it can to help you do your job with small amounts of data, where the statistics are not as good as when you have huge amounts of data? Then there is the question that they call extrapolation, which is it wasn't just a direct statistical analysis, which is what AI does in predicting what's the next word in the sentence. The language was trained with huge amounts of data, and then it's able to predict using statistics what is the likely next word. But what if it's not that clear what the likely next word? So you need to do some extrapolation, which is not quite statistical in nature. You have to have some other kinds of knowledge that help you do the extrapolation. A third thing they mention is, what if there isn't just one single answer to the extrapolation, or one single prediction? What if there are multiple solutions? And people have used the term, it's a wicked problem, where there are, I don't know, 10 different potential solutions, and it's not clear which of the 10 are the right ones. So you have to keep adding new knowledge that comes from God knows where to decide what is the best one. And then there is the fact that while AI does superb with predictions based on large amounts of data, there are often subjective human beliefs that help them in doing that prediction, or uh, they use knowledge that they have about the nature of the world and the nature of how humans behave that you haven't been able to train an AI to do. And those are all quote unquote deficiencies in AI. Now, when I say deficiencies, I don't mean the AI is bad. It's not like saying, look, this car is not a good car because it doesn't know how to fly. Well, I never told you the car would fly. The car is supposed to be a car. Its job is to get you from here to there. You want a machine that flies, we call that an airplane. So there is a lot of things that the AI can do very well, but there are a lot of things that it cannot do very well, and
So,
that's where the humans come in.
so Irving, uh, Thomas Sowell said that there's no solutions, there's only trade-offs. And so human beings all the time make trade-offs when they're making
Exactly.
decision making. But here's what has me worried about this. So, I mean, you've just enumerated a whole bunch of places where humans today still have an advantage over AI. But doesn't this make you concerned that maybe we're moving a little bit too fast, putting AI in situations where they may make, high stakes decisions? And I mean, maybe that's not the best application for AI if they don't have the ability to have empathy or,
Let me but let me give a concrete
extrapolate.
let me give a concrete example. So, could AI help a human radiologist make a better prediction about what areas, let's say, of a mammogram should be examined much more because it's able to detect some issue that maybe the human may have missed. So the AI and by the way, what I'm telling you is a good example. AI has been uh, used for a few years as a tool to help radiologists in doing their job because it can detect, being a machine, things that maybe the radiologists wouldn't have detected. But if you then ask the AI, uh, how should we treat this woman based on the X-ray that or the MRI that we just did? That is no longer what it was trained to do. That is now what the radiologist is trained to do, but the radiologist training goes beyond what it should do because the radiologist also trained with the process of making a decision of the treatment, which is the radiologist is now working with other oncologists, say, MDs that specialize in different kinds of cancers. And so together they can make the decision as to what to do. And that kind of collaboration with other humans, that kind of understanding when just making a decision is just making a predictions is what's needed versus now making a decision that requires judgment, that requires understanding the medical history of this particular person. So the humans, when making a complex decision, bring to bear lots of other elements that the AI just hasn't been trained to do. And, and that's where the difference is. And that's why time and time again, when you look at how do we start leveraging a new technology, the answer has come back to say let the humans learn how to leverage the technology so that the humans, together with the new tools, can do their jobs much better. And that's
Yeah.
the case with,
So when it comes to decision making, I think for me, the term augmentation is quite appropriate. Still push back with the ideation. That seems like more of a replacement. But anyway, I want to drill down a little bit
and I
more.
let me just, remember, uh, we had typewriters. And then, were you too young to know what a typewriter was, or you knew what a typewriter was?
I was in typewriting class my junior year in high school, Irving. I was a touch typist.
Okay, so was I.
And I was trained on a manual typewriter in order to strengthen. They didn't let us use electrics until our fingers were strong enough.
So, a typewriter uh, was great for its time, but it was a pain if you made a mistake to correct the mistake. Sometimes you use white something or another, I forget what we called it, and
Whiteout.
type white out and typed over it. Sometimes you had to replace the whole document. And then we got word processing. And you have to agree if you're going to type something, word processing is so much better for all kinds of reasons. And then the word processing was able to correct grammatical mistakes and different things. And the technology added all kinds of new qualities that the typewriter never had, but it's the human who was significantly augmented and able to do things. And whereas, let's say in the past, if you were a researcher, whatever, you needed a typing assistant to help type your documents. Now we often do our own typing in the word processing, and the very process of entering it adds to our creativity in doing the document. So I would say that's a very simple example of where a technology had a huge impact on the transformation of lots of jobs. And AI is taking all that a few steps beyond. And that's always been the case.
All right. I hear you. That's a good example with the typewriter, but I want to move on to Isabella, talk about Isabella a little bit more. So she argues that AI lacks some fundamental human capabilities like emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
networking, and vision. Um, but some people argue um, that it's shaping how we form connections and make decisions. And, um, you know, there's speculation, is AI more socially aware than we think? I mean, how do you kind of weigh emotional intelligence
Well,
of AI
remember,
versus people?
remember, let me let me defend AI since you just said it's deficient in emotions. The poor AI can only do things it's been trained to do, correct?
Hmm.
So we don't know how to train a human in characteristics that are very important for humans, like empathy, what we call emotional intelligence, what we call creativity, what we call imagination. There is no body of data that we can just use to train the humans. You know how you train the humans in this case? And of course, you know,
Oh,
because
wait a minute. Hold on. I want to pause you there. You say there's not a body of data. I'm not so sure that's too true. What if we created a body of data, using tone of voice? We could record people who are talking on the telephone, having conversations. I mean, we could generate data that
No,
represented emotional
yeah.
data. And who's to say that we couldn't train the AI uh,
Well,
to have emotional reactions?
and people, I'm sure, when you're trying to train a customer service rep, you know, when you're trying to train an AI to behave like a customer service rep, you can train it to detect when the human it's trying to help is getting upset. You can probably do that, but
Well, I mean, you can also train the AI using facial expressions to recognize emotion. And in
you
fact, there's startup companies that are doing that.
they are, but those are skills that humans learn from the time they are children that add to what we call emotional intelligence. That people who've been studying this say it's very difficult to actually teach that to a person other than by living in the real world, by interacting with classmates in school, by understanding how to deal with different emotions. I mean, the difference between predicting the next word in a sentence, which is very statistical, and understanding why a classmate is not being as nice to you as you would hope that the classmate would be is very different. And humans tend to grow up learning all this stuff. And if humans are deficient in emotional or social intelligence, and often you hope that they get a job where that's not as badly needed because we don't know how to do that. And the
So,
best answer,
Irving, listen, I mean, birds came to fly through a process of evolution, right? I
yes,
mean, airplanes also fly. They didn't evolve to get that way, but we built airplanes. Airplanes are not birds. I just wonder if we can simulate, if we can gather data on emotion and we can train the machine to simulate emotion, are we really gonna,
but
then the machine could
let,
express emotion
let me
like an
say,
airplane. It won't be a bird, but
but this gets back to the whole point of Isabella's paper, which is when it comes to something that requires huge amounts of data to make a very good prediction, AI is superb because it's able to analyze gazillions of data, build up its neural nets and use mathematical predictions, etc., etc., etc. It does that superb. Humans are limited in their ability to analyze huge amounts of data. However, when it comes to things that require emotional intelligence, social intelligence, and things like that, humans are much better. So why isn't the right approach to looking at the future of AI in the workplace to have the humans and the AI collaborate with each other and let each do what they are best at doing instead of having a superb analytical AI which is only a D minus in emotional and social intelligence, and a superb human that has inherited and learned how to be much more responsive to emotions, social intelligence, bring opinions and judgments to bear, but it's not so good at analyzing huge amounts of data. And that combination is what will really produce the best thing. And again, that's not just with AI. That has been studied about just about every new technology and every new tool, and AI is not different. So that's the key point of their paper.
All right. Humans and AIs collaborating. I hear what you're saying. Let's
By
just
the way, let me add one thing. David Autor actually has studied this issue quite a bit, and he wrote a really good paper. I think it was in 2015 about the fact that uh, every occupation is composed of multiple tasks. So it's not as easy as asking, will the new technology, let's say in this case AI, totally automate an occupation? Because what normally happens, and the case of the typewriter is a very good example, is that if you're a writer entering your ideas and into a computer or on paper is only part of what you're doing. You have to decide what you're going to write about. You have to decide what are the elements, what are the different things. And so the task of analyzing data or entering what's in your mind and into paper is something that uh, the machines can do well, but then there are the other parts that the humans do much better. And that's why when you really look at the impact of a new technology, it's rare that it totally replaces the occupation because some of the tasks do disappear because they get all automated, but then it makes the humans much more productive because now they can use the new tools that have been automated to do their job much better. And again, that's been there over and over and over.
All right, so Irving, this is a great lead into my next question, and that is, I'm going to get back to Aidan's paper a little bit. So Aidan talked about how AI shifts the scientists' work from generating ideas to evaluating AI generated ideas. So,
Remember, it's not
hold on, hold on.
okay.
So
Okay.
there's a couple parts. So first
Yeah.
of all. Um, you and I talked once before that one of the problems with the AI generating the ideas is that it infringed upon a part of the job that the scientists really liked to do. In other words, they liked to do the idea generation, and that the work that they were now focusing their time on wasn't quite as interesting. And, so there was an emotional human reaction to this shift in what they did. So the question is, is there a risk that we're going to lose some of the human creativity in the scientific discovery process?
Well, first of all, what one of the most surprising findings in Aiden's paper is that you would have expected that the top researchers who were the very best at evaluating which of the ideas that AI found for them would be better or not, uh, they said, they missed that part of their job. They love to also come up with new ideas, not just to evaluate the ideas, which is where what they were good at shined. And he was surprised to find it. And the reality is that, and in fact, I think in the blog I wrote about a seminar I attended at MIT a few years ago by a University of Toronto researcher, and he said that one of the biggest economic impact of AI is that it makes the cost of making predictions much, much lower. And as a result, a lot of jobs, a lot of human activities will now include prediction as part of their activity. And what happens then is just making predictions becomes more quote unquote commoditized because now you have the technology can help so much more in making the predictions. But when making predictions becomes commoditized, all of a sudden judgment goes up. Let me get back to the radiologist. So the radiologist, before they had AI as a helper in the radiology, one of their jobs was to look at different things that they found in the X-ray or MRI or CAT scan that should be investigated further. And that was a big part of their job. All of a sudden, AI as an assistant to the radiologist can predict which of the things to should be investigating further with a lot more precision than the radiologist could. And so,
So, Irving, I just want to bring you back to the actual question that I asked. Do you think that we are at risk of losing human creativity in the
no,
scientific discovery process?
no, because judgment requires a huge amount of creativity. And what you're doing now is using the human creativity in the part of the job that so far the technology cannot do. And trying to decide the kind of treatment that should be followed for what the radiologist found and trying to bring your experience based on having worked with lots of different, let's say, women in the case of mammograms, in deciding where to worry and where you don't need to worry. That kind of judgment all of a sudden becomes far more important. I
So Irving, I hear you on judgment, and I hear you with respect to the radiology example. But what if, just hypothetically,
yes,
AI starts generating solutions that are beyond our understanding? They're just opaque. We don't understand where it came up with the idea, but it works. And so are we at risk of getting into a state where all we're doing is verifying what the AI tells us?
I think that would be a bad mistake because don't forget, AI does its best to do what it's been trained to do, but uh, you've heard the term hallucinations, haven't you?
Well,
AI,
I've experienced them.
AI, you cannot 100% trust what AI is telling you to do or what AI is making a prediction about until you check it out, until you apply the human judgment. And what happens is whether we're talking about healthcare or lawyers or other things, if we now have more tools that, in the case of lawyers, can analyze a lot more legal information than was possible before and make some recommendations. The job of the top lawyers is going to be which of the ones the AI is recommending are the most likely to apply to this particular case with this particular judge, with this particular client, and which ones are unlikely to work. And don't forget, in most professions, it may take some time for the transition to happen, but eventually, what you're paying for, what you really value, is the human judgment that no tool can do as well as the human can do. And that is happening with AI with a vengeance. And
All
in fact,
right. So,
I
so
think,
er,
let me tell you, I think I've been thinking quite a bit about this. Um, I mean, you and I have discussed that uh, there have been new technologies throughout the Industrial Revolution, from steam power, electricity, computers, the internet. What makes AI different from these other ones? And I've, I I think that what's different is that it goes after this quality called intelligence. So we are looking, remember, the term is artificial intelligence. And so if you we think, okay, so what AI will do is obviate the need for humans because it is so intelligent, it can do everything a human can do. That is the absolutely worst use of AI, because there will always be a difference between the intelligence that an AI algorithm will be able to do and what a human can do. And that will always be the case. I know,
I hear you, but I actually think about it differently. When I look at the technological revolutions in the past, I see technologies coming around that can, do things better than a human. A car can drive faster than I can walk.
yes.
Calculator can crunch numbers better than I can.
Remember, the car
Hold
doesn't,
on. So the I mean, what you call artificial intelligence for me is not a thinking human being. It is a machine that's
yes,
able to emulate a certain type of processing that
yes,
is a useful tool for me. But,
yes,
uh, it is doing a computation with words that is useful for me as a tool, just the same way that a
yes,
calculator was doing computations with
yes.
numbers that's useful for me.
Yeah, and at some level, what we're talking about here, it's a very interesting question. Some people say at some point we'll have AGI, artificial general intelligence, which really means AI can do anything a human can do much better. That's what AGI is. And I think what's the other term? SAI. What does it?
We've all read the book The Singularity, Irving.
Yeah. Now, I guess what some people think, oh, AGI will be here in 5 years. Some people think it won't be here at all. I am much closer to the second because I think that the hu I don't see a machine, a technology obviating the need for human judgment. And the better our technologies get in helping us do our jobs, the more valuable human judgment will be. And whether AI eventually is so powerful that it can do everything that a human can do, that is pure speculation, as Rodney Brooks told us in his keynote at the MIT.
Well, Irving, speaking of Rodney, I wanted to shift the conversation to one of your favorite topics, which actually, in some ways, was inspired by Rodney. So, you have electricity, you had the internet, um, those technologies caused us to do a massive infrastructure
Yeah.
shift. And one of Rodney's complaints about cars that you and I talked about in a prior podcast is that we tried to build autonomous cars on the old roads. We didn't put any investment in the actual road infrastructure, which, in his view, could have benefited the self-driving car industry. So, what are you thinking about when it comes to infrastructure investments for, AI-driven R&D? What do you think's needed?
To be honest, it's a relatively new topic. What is needed to help make the job of AI in helping predict, uh, let's say, new cures for cancer? That's a very good example, which actually is a very important one. First of all, I think we need to do an even bigger job in training AI with what has worked in the past in cures of cancer. I mean, just as an example, one of the things I've been doing in the last year and a half is working in a project at the Linux Foundation to see about how can uh, we have a new project on healthcare, because healthcare is about as complicated a discipline as there is. And one of the most interesting questions is the application of AI to healthcare. And let's say one of the problems in being able to do a good job there is that the information that we use in healthcare is not very easily accessible because there are still lots of proprietary things, there are lots of regulations, and on and on and on. And if you're trying to decide how to best treat somebody with certain characteristics that are not uh, very common, you want to be able to reach out to what has worked in the past. And AI can be very good at that, but only if it's able to access the histories of what has worked in the past. And we are far from that in the world of healthcare just because the information isn't readily accessible. So I think there is going to be still a lot of work in the world of research and in the world of innovation in just getting access to information that will help the humans do a better job. And we have barely scratched the surface. Remember, machine learning, deep learning are 10 to 15 years old, not much more than that. And as we try to apply what AI is good at to many more disciplines, will realize the limitation we have in being able to access the information that AI can help us analyze so we can do a better job. And all that will come up, that will be part of the progress. And the job of the humans will be to work very closely with our tools to help, let's say, change the research mechanisms to help the tool help us do a better job in healthcare or in managing global supply chains or in managing so many different disciplines. So
So Irving, how do you think we need to upgrade our training of future scientists and engineers and uh, knowledge workers, given the changes that are coming in AI and accepting that, this AGI boogeyman isn't coming anytime soon, if at all, but we got this new tool coming down. It's very powerful. How do we change the education environment for the future people?
okay, the first answer is I don't know. And that's where, let's say, you mentioned at the beginning that Darren and David didn't totally agree on the, what will be the impact of AI. Darren thought it would take quite a bit longer to see the impact of AI on GDP growth and productivity that the more um, bullish people on AI are predicting. He said it will happen, but it's likely to take 10, 20 years, not 3 to 5 years, as many are predicting, because he just hasn't seen that happening when he analyzes data. David was very positive about AI helping to rebuild the middle class by providing people with certain professions that had more of a limited knowledge, additional sources of knowledge, so their jobs could be done at a higher level. For example, a nurse practitioner or physician assistant could do jobs that require a higher level medical education, not quite at the level of an MD, but at a higher level than they have now. And therefore, um, we will be augmenting what different jobs can do. And that's all ahead of us.
All right,
That's
so if you
part
don't
of,
if you don't have specific suggestions on what we need to do
well, the specific
to,
projection is we have to keep working on this.
well,
That's
so how are we gonna, how do you expect that we're gonna discover the changes in education required?
we are going to do it through the usual trial and error process. We'll hopefully be applying AI in the workplace. We see what works, we see what doesn't work. We'll see how we can make what doesn't work better. We will get to the point, for example, Darren has a term that sometimes we apply technology to automate tasks that humans can do better and where there is no productivity improvement. He called that bullshit automation. And when I say he called that, he's done that in
That's a very technical term.
that's a very technical term. So we will learn what kind of automation is a waste of time, because if you're automating something that humans can do much better, that doesn't cost that much, you're actually hurting productivity rather than improving productivity. And those are the things that will take us decades to figure out. By the way, getting back to Rodney Brooks, in the um, in his keynote, in his keynote was last year, right? In
Last year, yeah.
2024, he told us, to be careful with uh, not being very with predicting things AI can do that we don't know how it can do that. He called that applying magical thinking. Since we don't understand what AI can do or how it does it, well, if you don't understand, you may as well apply magic. And I don't know if you remember, he talked about magical thinking as one of the issues of people, of the hype in AI. And how do you replace magical thinking? Well, with real apply AI in the workplace. See what works, see what doesn't work. Let me give you a concrete example. Uh, for a while, people thought you and I having this kind of conversation uh, over the internet is not as good as having a metaverse where we each have an avatar and we can have lots of other people, and the metaverse will be a major thing. And I don't know if you remember, a couple of companies said, gee, maybe I'll change the name of my company to take into account metaverse and what people will be doing. Notice nobody's talking about metaverse except in the world of gaming. That's an example, getting back to Aidan's research, where people came up with an idea that sounded so interested in principle, but once they put it into practice, they realized this is a bad idea. This is not an idea that's going to go anywhere. And we're going to have to do that over and over and over and over and over again with a technology as powerful as AI. And that's how we'll learn.
All right, Lindsay, remind me of the name of the guy from McKinsey who moved to Google. You've
Oh,
written
yeah,
about him,
James Manica.
Manica. All right, that's who I was thinking of. So we're gonna play a James Manica mind experiment, right?
Yes.
So we're gonna fast forward 20 years, which is something he likes to do.
Yeah,
And
he did 2050.
okay, 2050. We could do 2050 if you
Yeah,
want to do that. Let's say the year is 2050. So AI has transformed the scientific discovery process and workplace automation. And so what do you see as the ideal human AI partnership in 2050? Describe it.
oh, I think through lots of empirical research that will include both advances in technology and transformation of business strategies and transformation of societies, we will learn what worked and what's an idea that even though we thought back in 2030 would really work, turns out to, first of all, not work so much, turns out to have no return on investment. So you couldn't convince business to do that. And through lots of trial and error, we will put ideas in practice. We will have lots of startups try to come up with all kinds of new innovations. Now, Alan, what's the success rate of startups? 10%,
Not even.
not even. And that's a very good example of the difference between prediction and reality. Uh, Lots of startups can have great ideas, but then the real world is very cruel. And sometimes the ideas are super successful, and sometimes like search or e-commerce, and sometimes the ideas don't quite work out as we thought they would, like the use of metaverse in the world of business. So
All right.
we will be having, I can guarantee you that the executive director of the MIT CIO Symposium will be dealing with these kinds of questions 10, 20 years from now, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, inviting CIOs to come tell us about their experience, and on and on.
So, Irving, while we're on this journey, let's just think about one thing. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, remember all the promise about social media and all the wonderment it was going to bring to the world, and we discovered that, ooh, it has some very negative side effects. What do you see in our future as a negative side effect?
You know, let's just take something a little more concrete, which actually Rodney also wrote about. People have been predicting self-driving cars and self-driving robot taxis for, I don't know, 10 years, maybe 8 years. And we don't have too many truly self-driving cars, except in very limited places. And as Rodney reminded us, in
I think they'd be better called remotely supervised cars.
that's what he reminded us, that first of all, there is only one company right now that is actually experimenting a lot with self-driving cars, which is Waymo, which is owned by Google or by Alpha, and very expensive, but Google makes a lot of money. And in order for Waymo to do its job as a robotaxi, it requires a team of people monitoring where those cars are. And so a lot of the ROI that you would have expected begins to melt down if, in fact, you cannot have robotaxis without having the support system of additional people to monitor the robotaxis. Now, I'm not saying that will be the case forever. It could be that 10, 15 years from now, we will learn how to handle it much better, either because we have much better self-driving technology that doesn't require people monitoring it, or something else. But these are all examples of research, and not just technological research, but business strategy research, what works and what doesn't work.
But again, the question is about what might derail the promise of an AI augmented future.
I don't see anything derailing it other than something stupid we humans do. I honestly think, as was the case with computers and the internet, we've made some decisions that didn't turn out as good as we expected, but for the most part, we've made gigantic progress with computers. We went from expensive mainframes in the 1960s to super powerful smartphones today. In the case of the internet, uh, some of the things that we created, like social media, had a more negative impact than we expected, but lots of other things, like our ability to have this conversation over distance, have worked out really well. Uh, We can go back to electricity, we can go back to cars and airplanes. I am very hopeful that we will make progress, but it will take time and it will take a lot of good technology research, business research, regulatory research, and I'm very comfortable with that.
All right, I got one last question and then we're going to wrap up. And that is, if you were going to give one piece of advice to a young scientist or business leader on how to prepare for this AI-driven world, what would it be?
Oh God, education is more important than ever at all levels. Clearly, if you're going to be more in the research aspect, you want to go to universities and get college, masters, whatever. Uh, Other people will focus much more on how to transform their industry, uh, manufacturing, are there reinvent manufacturing, reinvent new things. I think startups are going to be extremely important because the only way to know if an idea works, I don't mean it's the only way, but the way that works best is to test it in the marketplace. That's why I'm a huge believer in free market capitalism, where you test the ideas in the marketplace and see which ones work and which ones don't work. Um, so I I feel very positive about the challenges the human race has ahead of them, and I think as James Manica wrote about, it will be very nice to feel very good about where AI has headed in 2050 if we do all the necessary work to get us there in a very nice way. It won't be easy, but neither was deploying electricity at scale.
All right. Well, with that, Irving, I think we're going to bring this episode to a close. I want to thank everybody for joining us for episode 8, and also to remind you that if you want to read Irving's blog, you can go to our online community and find all the blogs posted in our public square. But that's all we got for today. Bye-bye.